Hello and welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, your daily guide to decoding current affairs the smart way for UPSC. It's February 24, 2026 and today's edition brings you powerful articles for your mains preparation. First, PRAHAAR, India's first anti-terror policy. We will be examining its strategic framework and implications for our internal security. Second, we will be having a look on the independence of the Election Commission of India and having a critical discussion on the constitutional safeguards, appointment processes and the health of India's democracy. Finally, we will be concluding the discussion with prelims pointers, which are highly important articles specially curated for the upcoming prelims 2026 examination on May 24th. So let's begin. So guys, I want all of you to close your eyes for a second. Just imagine the length and breadth of our country. Imagine about the number of big cities that we have. Imagine the number of big infrastructure, including the digital infrastructure on which we are actually conversing right now. Imagine about the various assets of our country in various parts of the nation. Just imagine if even one terrorist succeeds, it will cause disruption along the entire length and breadth of the country. So this is exactly why the Ministry of Home Affairs have for the first time came up with a National Anti-Terror Policy known as PRAHAAR. Now, we are not only talking about the cross-border threats that come across our beloved neighbor Pakistan. We are also talking about the recent new age threats that are plaguing our country. For example, the cyber terrorism or the various criminal hackers who hack our UPI systems, leak our Aadhaar card data and amongst various other things. So that is exactly why we have tried to encapsulate all the various threat parameters that India is facing right now in 2026 into a single 9-page document as a part of the broader National Counter-Terrorism Policy and Strategy, which will be finalized soon and will be released maybe in the coming weeks or months. But as of now, we have got this PRAHAAR policy. So we will be having a deep dive into the various aspects of this policy, looking through various PYQs, the various causes of terrorism in our country, and most importantly, what are the various other policies that the government of India have been actively following to reduce the menace of this terrorism in the country. So now, let us start with the main philosophy behind PRAHAAR. Now, when the Ministry of Home Affairs was finalizing this document, our various experienced officers, including the ones from intelligence bureaus, so they have right now realized the thing that terrorism is not only a land issue right now, because traditionally when Pakistan could not win wars against us, where they were the very first ones who waged wars against us, nevertheless they could not win any one of them. On the top of that, they also have lost 9-1 to India in the various international competitions in cricket, right? So that means that Pakistan is incapable of any regard when it comes to India or any competition. Now, for example, India is right now evolving its terrorism policy. It right now has realized that border infiltration or the various sleeper cells which the ISI operates in our country are not the only threat that is in front of us right now. We also face aerial threats from drones. We also face various threats on the port side, on the coastal side. For example, we have various mega ports in the country. Any terrorists can actually come and sabotage the same, block the ports. Alongside the same, right now, we are actually among the top 5 nations when it comes to the nominal GDP in the entire world. Now that is why we have so many important sectors in the country. The power sector, the railways, aviation, ports, defense, space and atomic energy. These are all the sectors which are actually very critical for our national security, our economic aspirations to actually propel us becoming a $5 trillion economy. I will be also showing the various losses that are actually accrued to Indian economy due to terrorism. And that is why we are actually coming with a multi-domain policy to counter terrorism. And that is where from this 9-page document released by the Ministry of Home Affairs, PRAHAAR stands for P. It is actually the prevention of terror attacks to protect Indian citizen and interests. R for responses which are swift and proportionate to the threat posed, right? Also aggregating internal capacities or pulling out various resources from the armed forces or the police officers, right, to achieve synergy in whole of government approach, so that not the state government, not the district level government, or say the center government should be operating in silos. They all must be coming together. Also, when it comes to human rights and rule of law, and attenuating the conditions enabling terrorism, including radicalization, aligning and shaping the international efforts to counter terrorism, and at the end of the day, recovery and resilience through a whole of society approach. So this is exactly what all of you should also be writing in your mains answer. So I would tell all of you to note this down in your notes, and also whenever we are talking about any way forward, or when you are talking about any policies, you have to give this PRAHAAR and it's also full formed as much as you can. Now, there was a question in 2021 mains. Analyze the complexity and the intensity of terrorism it causes, linkages and obnoxious nexus. Now through this, we have to try to understand the various causes and also the evolving nature of terrorism and the new dimensions of terrorism in our country right now. So through a PYQ and also through the PRAHAAR 9-page document, right, all of these things which we are going to discuss has been also been discussed in the PRAHAAR document, and through that we are trying to understand what are the various new dimensions of terrorism. Firstly, when we talk about the usual one, which is a cross-border terrorism from Pakistan, the document is directly talking about the Pakistan-backed terror networks sponsored by ISI. So ISI operates various handlers in Jammu and Kashmir and also in the various other parts of the country. Right now they have also found a new friend in Bangladesh and various other such countries and various other such interest groups which are against India, and they are trying to operate and fund those networks. So various youth and handlers mainly, they operate across the border. They use right now various social media platforms such as Meta, and even they sometimes use gaming platforms. For example, they use the in-game chat. For example, if you have ever played some very popular games such as PUBG, you have seen that you can chat on PUBG in the interlay of the game, right? So that is where some terrorist organizations are also using those things, right? And that is exactly why Pakistan is following a proxy warfare model. We have already discussed, we already know that Pakistan cannot win with India across land, ocean or air superiority of our armed forces. And that is why Pakistan follows the doctrine of bleeding India through 1,000 cuts. That means they will send 100 of terrorists and maybe one of them will be successful in planting some bomb or blasting something in various parts of our country. That means that they are sending hundreds of thousands of people from Pakistan through various porous border, and that is where they are, kind of attacking India in this way. And according to them, this is war, right? This is jihad according to them. Also, when we talk about the various other named threats in the document is itself talking about jihadi terror groups, frontal organizations which are directly talking about anti-India sentiment. Also, the various sleeper cells. These are the various youth, right, who are actually heavily radicalized by some radical Islamist forces in Pakistan. And the various fundings and the various technologies and the various advices, they come across the border to them. They generally remain inactive for majority part of the year. Sometimes when some funding comes or some technology comes or some messages come across the border, they suddenly become active and they wreak havoc. Also, when we talk about the global terrorist organization, we also have identified Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, which are directly mentioned in the document. That means that they are still a threat in the country, right? And because their main modus operandi, their model of operating is actually online, right? They actually stalk various youth online. They try to find various youth who are mainly from the vulnerable sections of the population. They tag them, they try to radicalize them, right? And they try to train them also sometimes on an online platform too. Next comes perhaps one of the most serious threats which are actually onlooking India, because sometimes Chinese hackers, they target our power plants, They target our railway operations, sometimes even target our airports and totally shut down them. They steal our data. They look into our ports. They actually are very intrusive, and that is why these criminal hackers needs to be controlled. They need to be actually be taught how to be dealt with. And that is why right now we are actually seeing a policy shift from actually identifying cross-border terrorism to also looking into the various cyber spheres of terrorism too. Now, when we continue the various evolving, changing dimensions of terrorism, we have right now emerging technologies which are being more affordable right now, and that is why these terror organizations are using them. For example, you have seen during Operation Sindoor how this terrorist nation was sending various drones, right? And also sometimes some terrorist organizations, they use drones to smuggle various illegal drugs, which is the main reason why maybe Pakistan economy is still alive, because they are actually focusing on this opium trade, drugs peddling and various other things which are totally, alienating the economy of Pakistan, and that is why they are going time and again to IMF begging for various loans. Also, when we talk about the online platform, we have already discussed. Right now, let us look into what are the tools they are using actually. They are using encrypted networks, mainly the networks they are using and accessing via VPN, so that they are trying to hide their IP address, right? They're already ashamed to use their names and various other aspects publicly, but at the end of the day, they are using VPN networks and various other tools which are easily found on dark web to mask their internet address, to mask their identity, to actually mask the various transactions they send via various, say, bank channels and transfers to India. So they are using this kind of encrypted networks to even chat with themselves, right? So they are using cryptocurrencies and various encrypted apps, and that is where they are trying to run their social media radicalization campaign, right? They are spreading propaganda, they are targeting recruitment of various youth, mainly in Jammu and Kashmir region. They are trying to unsettle the region for a long period of time, and also they are conducting remote operations, right? And this is where we have to understand they are also using AI, robotics. Also, when we are discussing about the changing nature of terrorism, we cannot ignore this term which has been given by the government, also very important for your mains answer. CBRNED threat. This means that chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, explosive and digital. So in a sum, if you can try to sum up the various reasons of the changing nature of terrorism, these are the various levels at which they are operating right now. And that is where we have to understand, guys, that the story does not stop here. There are much more bigger players at work. Now these terror organizations, they operate on a shared platform. Now they share platform with organized criminals such as Mr. Dawood Ibrahim, right? If you can understand, you already know, right? Dawood Ibrahim notably became more popular in some recent Bollywood movie. In the comments you can let me know. And he is actually one of the prime reasons why the terror campaigns in India from around 2000s to around, say, right now, even in the present times, they're operating, because they operate a very big syndicate. They have ties, his organization, they have ties with multiple amount of terrorist organizations, and it is where we have to understand the underworld meets the terrorist organizations. The underworld, they peddle drugs, they do smuggling, they do hawala transactions, they do money laundering, and that is why naturally the Pakistani terrorists, they are best friend with such criminals. So time and again you see such organized gang networks. They operate very well, they gel very well with the terrorists, and the terrorists, they gel very well with this kind of organized criminals, right? Because these terrorists use their networks to send money, to actually smuggle the various kind of arms and ammunitions inside and outside the country. They also, for example, are infamously linked with narcotics, and that is why we have to understand they use a lot of organized criminals. And this is where the underworld becomes very, very infamous in the country. And when we talk about the transnational terrorism, this is also a term in this question from 2021 mains, right? So when we talk about the organized crimes and the transnational terrorist organization, then relations with the same, it is very, very linked together. This kind of drugs or so weapons which are smuggled, and the networks and the gangsters, they gel with each other. And that is why sometimes they operate on a very larger scale. They operate not only in India, they operate from Nepal, they operate from, say, various Gulf countries, right? They operate from Canada. In recent times, we have seen they are also spreading wings in Bangladesh. So that means that national actions sometimes fall short. And that is why this document is right now calling for regional cooperation. And that is why maybe we have some hope with the change of government in Bangladesh, with the recent visit of the Canadian Prime Minister in India as of now, right? We are also engaging with the Gulf countries. So if you see the pattern of our Prime Minister's engagement with the various international partners, we are finally actually extending the regional cooperation. We are extending the international coordination. We are trying to share intelligence across the border, right? We are also going to discuss the same at the very end. Also, we are trying to track the finances of such organization. All of this will be discussed at the end. Now, also, perhaps one of the most important things may be perhaps the foundation or the roots of such terror groups, which is the radicalization of the youth. Right? They are using this kind of social media platform, gaming platform, apps, religious distortion by various infamous radical Islamic scholars in Pakistan. Right? One of the famous ones is Mr. Zakir Naik. Right? Also, with reference to them, they are spreading this kind of ideological propaganda. So this is where we have to understand, guys, that terrorism, as of now, it is very interesting to note also that there is not a single universally agreed version of definition of terrorism, because it simply has so many psychological dimensions. It has some kind of, say, violence. It has various kinds of dimensions here. So it is very difficult to narrow on one particular definition, because if you look at the various impacts of terrorism in the country, firstly, if you look at the human life cost due to terrorism, insurgency and extremism from 2000 to 2025 as of now, there have been around, if you see the total cost of life to be around 15,000 people. The Southeast Asian region has accounted for around $1.4 trillion of losses due to terrorism in the entire region. When we compare India's rank in the Global Terrorism Index 2025, India is actually at rank 14th, right? If you see, Pakistan is at rank 2nd. So the same country which promotes terrorism, that same country is actually facing terrorism activities itself. And that is where, they have sown the seeds of their own destruction. Now, when we look into the various other impacts, the society, whenever, for example, remember the time when you have heard about the Pahalgam attack. Remember how anxious we all were as a nation, that heard the news that some people were killed just because they were not able to recite the Kalma. It is a very small picture. It is not about the Kalma. It is actually about taking Indian lives through 1,000 cuts, right? And such things maybe brings good news in Pakistan, but not in India, right? They brings anxiety. The various sections of population, mainly the areas which are affected by terrorism. For example, in Jammu and Kashmir. So recently, I had the pleasure of visiting Kashmir and interacting with the local people there. They themselves believe that these terrorist organizations and Pakistan have direct correlation. And that is where we have to understand that such things actually cultivate more vulnerability, because the ISI handlers and the various terror modules which operate in Jammu and Kashmir, mainly in the border regions with Pakistan, they actually also threaten the youth into committing various terrorist organizations and the various activities. So this is why we have to understand that the dimensions of terrorism go far beyond than just inflicting terror. It is actually, how they cultivate a generational level of hatred against India and against some particular religion. Also, when we talk about the IR, if India or say some other countries are affected by terrorism, if you look at all the countries which are, say, above or below India in this ranking, none of them are actually doing very good when it comes to economics, except India. Because India is on one hand focusing on development, on one hand it is also dealing with these increased costs. And it is spending a lot on infrastructure and various amounts of, say, resources which are deviated from national development. So that is why we have to understand that if there is a country which is suffering from terrorism, their international repute comes down. For example, look at Pakistan, Syria, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Somalia. You understand how their context is internationally, right? And when we talk about the resources, the police resources, the infrastructure resources that we have to just only spend to counter terrorism, that means that we cannot use those resources for nation development, for nation building, right? And also we are losing human lives. We are losing human capital, we are losing human resources. So this means the impacts are far wide. Now, Pakistanis do not believe in their GDP. They believe in taking loans with reference to begging from IMF, and also they believe in gross terror product, right? They do not believe in GDP, they believe in GTP, which means that, informal terror financing which they do in Jammu and Kashmir, for example, is roughly 3.5 billion per year. So that means they have this much of money to go against a kind of illusionary warfare against India, but they do not spend this money in their own country, where people in Karachi cannot even turn on their fans because they do not have electricity, right? Also, this is a very sorrow thing for India too, because back in 2002, when we had the Kargil conflict, India was losing around 14.6 billion rupees per day, which means just to counter this kind of forces, we are spending this kind of money. And that is why, we have come up with a multi-dimensional strategy to come up with terrorism for years. Now, these are years of effort, guys. Firstly, when we look into the 7th schedule of our constitution, police and public order are actually under the state list, right? But when it comes to terrorism, center's role is actually building various skills, supplying resources, supplying various amount of arms and ammunitions to counter terrorist organizations. There are also various kind of central deployments along with the state police operations. So when it comes to terrorism, police, public order, all actually goes into a center plus state effort. Now when we talk about actually building proper border infrastructure, we have a comprehensive integrated border management system. Here we are trying to have smart fencing of our borders using satellite surveillance, unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, right, and various amounts of technologies, so that we can actually have a satellite live image of the various border villages and look into the various people who are illegally coming in India. Also looking into various underground mines and tunnels that the Pakistani cowards have actually excavated just to come into India and spread violence, right? Also, when we talk about our road infrastructure, we have the Bharatmala project, where we are trying to modernize our roads, build roads in areas where there are very remote connectivity. For example, if you look at Arunachal Pradesh, if you look at the various regions of Jammu and Kashmir, right? So these are the areas where we can have high amount of conflict. So that is our BRO, or the Border Road Organization, is actually constructing good condition all weather road that can be accessible all the year round. Next, we have a program known as the Vibrant Villages program. This is a program to develop holistically the border villages of our country. So we are trying to give livelihoods to the people. For example, a very unique model was followed in Arunachal Pradesh border, where the CAPF and the various armed forces who are posted there, they are trying to procure milk from the local people in the villages of the border areas. So on one hand, they are getting livelihood, they are getting money from the government, and on the other hand, we are building trust in the border villages, because the youth which are being radicalized, they can right now gain employment opportunities. They can right now say no to those handlers from ISI. And also the various state governments, they have joined patrolling, and that is why, with reference to even military spending, Government of India had spent 1.3 lakh crore in 2024-25 with reference to strengthening the military forces. Continuing the various multi-dimensional strategy to curb terrorism, we have two main acts. The UAP amendment in 2019 allowed India to classify any person plus any organization as terrorist organization and outfit. Also, when it comes to the NIA amendment in 2019, which actually allowed the NIA to conduct international searches with reference to any terrorist organization. Also, We have a 24/7 intelligence sharing and monitoring at the central level known as the Central Multi-Agency Center, and also the same is present at the state level. Now, when it comes to the preventive operation, we have the involvement of the CAPF, the army and the state police, and that is why we have seen over a period of time, our global terrorist index score is coming down, and that is why we have to understand the lower the better. Also, a very interesting thing which is happening right now, after 2016 terrorist attack in the country, when we conducted the surgical strikes, it was a signal that the Indian nation is sending to Pakistan that we are actually no longer passive. We will be punishing you by entering your borders. We are no longer say dealing with various policies and various other documents. We will straight away go to your border, we will enter the area and we will conduct surgical strikes. And the same strategy we have seen in 2016, 2019 at Balakot, 2025 Operation Sindoor. Right? And that is why we have to understand that we are focusing on punishing Pakistan on a very hard level. Also, when we talk about money, because money and terrorism goes together, we have coordinated very well with the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, which is an actually OECD oriented body to look into the various financial transactions of the various terrorist organizations and the people who do money laundering. So we have time and again actually been successful putting Pakistan in the grey list. We are again appealing to the same, and we have presented the various evidence from Operation Sindoor to FATF to again maybe enlist Pakistan under their grey list. And if a particular nation is under the grey list, it will not be getting easy loans, it will not be getting easy facilities when it comes to international trade. Now, FATF recommendations are not binding, but majority of the developed countries, they follow the FATF financial actions and the various recommendations. Also, the MHA and the NIA have their own cells regarding the financial operations of the terrorist organization. They look into the monitoring of the same. Also, the RBI and the various other banks in the country, they operate FICN coordination network along with the various ministries of the government of India. We also have the United Nations Security Council resolutions to actually universally find a definition for terrorism, to condemn various individuals who are terrorists, right? For example, Masood Azhar and various other persons, right, who are actually labeled as criminals and terrorists in India. And we are trying to spread this message to the UN too. And lastly, we also have the Operation Dhwast, which was actually targeted against organized criminals and gangsters and mainly was in relation with the Khalistani movement too. Also, when we talk about the advanced technology and the various global diplomacy efforts that India is putting in, we are actually using in AI, big data analytics and facial recognition along the entire borders, mainly those regions where the terrorism activities are actually on a high. Also, we have the National Intelligence Grid for proper sharing of information. Also, at the United Nations, we are pushing the convention to combat international terrorism and trying to define what is actually terrorism, right? We are also part of the USA, Russia, China, UK and Israel and India and various other countries on counter-terrorism. We are actually having 5 multilateral platforms, the ASEAN, BIMSTEC, BRICS, Quad, EU, and we are also trying to coordinate with this kind of multilateral platform against terrorism. Finally, India hosts the No Money for Terror. The 4th summit was actually held in Munich in 2025 to actually spread the discourse internationally against terrorism. So this was actually a very lengthy topic because we have discussed all the various strategies and the various steps the government has taken. Now it is time for you to write this answer. You can take hint from various diagrams such as this one, and now we will be moving on to the next one. So guys, in this article, we are actually going to look into the various dimensions of Election Commission of India and its independence. Now you have to understand guys, when we are talking about the Election Commission of India, it is the election watchdog of our country. That means that it looks into the various conduct of elections in the country. Primarily, it looks into and supervises the fair, free conduct of elections in our nation. And that is where, if you look into the Article 324, which is the main founding basis of the Election Commission of India, which makes it a constitutional body. It is responsible for the superintendence, direction and control of election. When it comes to mainly the elections at the Lok Sabha, the Rajya Sabha at the state legislative assembly, the Election Commission of India and their activities become very, very important. Highlighted by this 2017 PYQ2. In the comment section, you let me know what is the answer, because this is a very basic thing. We are actually in this discussion more concerned with the recent controversies. Also, when we talk about the main debate, why free, fair elections matter, we have to understand, guys, in a democracy, we are a nation of 1.4 to 1.5 billion people, right? We cannot actively go to our state legislative assemblies or the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha to debate, to bring in bills, to do various activities. That is why we are actually sending our MLAs and our MPs to those places to actually look into the various national matters, to look into what we actually need on a day-to-day basis and pass various bills, debate on national issues, and that is where our representatives are sent to those places. Now, the process by which the MLAs and MPs are chosen, right, they must be free and fair, and that is why, guys, elections to be free and fair is part of the basic structure of our constitution. And that is where, if there are some laws, there are some regulations, or there are some actions by the ECI which is against this basic structure, so that means that it can be subjected to judicial review. Also, when we talk about the Article 326, which gives us the legal right to vote, that means that we have this universal adult franchise in the country. If you are above the age of 18 years on a general basis, you are able to send your MPs to the Lok Sabha and represent you, fight for you, look after your issues. That means it is very important, for the elections to be totally free and fair. And which was also highlighted in a very landmark case known as the Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan case, where a prime minister was removed from the office just because there were various amounts of allegations of misconduct in the elections by which the Indira Gandhi government came to power. So this is actually the power of the people, right? And that is where, if there are some issues right now, we have to discuss. Firstly, one issue is always in the news. If you are not living under a rock, right, you must have heard about the SIR controversy, right? Special intensive revision is actually a provision under the Representation of the People Act 1950 and 1951, where the Election Commission of India is actually entrusted, right, to maintain proper electoral rolls, and such is also kind of mentioned in the Constitution in the Article 324 subclause 1. The superintendence, the direction and the control of the preparation of electoral rolls and the conduct of elections for the Parliament and the legislative of all the states is actually what the Election Commission of India must be very, very careful with. So that is where this electoral rolls, the registration of voters, the qualification of the various candidates who are fighting the elections, right, and the conduct of elections at the end are all the sacrosanct duties and functions of the Election Commission of India. And that is why when we talk about the electoral rolls here, the types of roll revision, for example, say, in a particular constituency, guys, that you cannot keep the same data forever, right? If there is one kind of electoral roll consisting of 2 crore voters as of 2020, so in 2026, maybe the 2 crore will be 2.2 crore, or say, there will be some voters who have shifted out of the constituency, some voters who have shifted inside the constituency. So, on a timely basis, we have to continuously update the various polls. So, one kind of, say, role is known as continuous updation rule. So, they are continuously updated on a, say, periodic basis, maybe on a monthly, quarterly basis. On an annual basis, we have the summary revision, and there is a special intensive revision which is right now being conducted in various state governments. Mainly, there have been various allegations of fake voters, voters who are dead but still are voting. There are various amounts of, say, instances of deletions of people from the voter list. So this means that this SIR which is being conducted right now, if you see one result from the recent elections in Bihar, so on an average, around 4.89% of the voters in Bihar were deleted in their SIR. See the impact on the overall voters. Overall voters dropped by around 16,000 people. And these 16,000 voters are not small. They can influence some elections too. And this is where, there were so many questions on the procedural safeguards that the Election Commission of India maybe did not follow, according to various critics. They actually, for example, whenever you go for a SIR exercise, if you are a government officer, you will be going to that household, you will be asking the various details, you're asking for the government documents, right? If you find that, okay, everything is perfect, then you give a thumbs up. If not, then obviously the people who are actually not able to give you the document, or say not be able to provide the document properly to you, then and there only should be given some time for various objections that you raise, or say they must be given some opportunity for appeal or review of your decision, right? Also, sometimes their names are deleted from the voter list just because of some capital letters in their name or some middle name that were not in the previous voter list. So due to various amounts of n number of reasons, many people did not find their name on the list. This means that on a state level, if you find 4.89% of votes which have been reduced, this means that the health of democracy comes down. Also, another thing is about the appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner. Who heads the Election Commissioner? So, what happens is that, for example, prior to 2023, Election Commissioner of India and the chief officer there, that is the Chief Election Commissioner, the CEC, was actually appointed by the President on the advice of the Union Council of Ministers. Here the Prime Minister actually led the same. So before that there was no law, and that is why, since Article 324 talks about the Election Commission of India, talks about the various members of the same, so that is why there must be a law. Because if you also can see in this article, and if you can read this Article 324 in details, it tells that there must be a parliament law with reference to the appointment of the members of the Election Commission of India. And that is why there were so many petitioners who challenged that, okay, as of now, as of 2023, so far since independence, we do not have any law. Only the Prime Minister is appointing the same. That is why the Prime Minister can appoint his best friend as the Chief Election Commissioner and keep on winning the elections forever, right? And that is why the Supreme Court in the Anup Baranwal case came up with a solution that since free and fair election is actually the basic structure of the constitution, the appointment of the same actually will be dictating how free and how fair the Election Commission of India in itself. And that is why, to remove this process, the Supreme Court of India actually came up with a panel of 3 members: Prime Minister, the Leader of Opposition in the Lok Sabha, and the Chief Justice of India. That is where the Supreme Court actually introduced a judicial check on the appointment of the CEC in the country, right? And here the central government became very angry with it. The central government then immediately passed the Chief Election Commission and Other Election Commissioners Act of 2023, the same year on which the judgment came. The Parliament right now came up with this act where there is a selection committee right now. Selection committee will be headed by the Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition, and instead of the CJI, right, we have the Union Cabinet Minister nominated by the Prime Minister. This is what the process is being followed right now. The previous judgment was overturned by a Parliament law. The Government of India is telling, okay, in the Constitution, it is written that the Parliament will be framing a law. Okay, since 2000 or say till 2023, there was no law, right? But there is a law in 2023 right now. So let us follow this law right now. So right now the Supreme Court also cannot tell too many things, right? Because the Supreme Court earlier filled a vacuum, right? Right now this vacuum was filled up with this law. But this law had the issue that the Union Cabinet Minister and the Prime Minister can overpower the Leader of Opposition in choosing a name for the CEC, right? And that is where, apart from the selection committee, there is a search committee right now. It is chaired by the Law Minister, by 2 secretaries, and that is where 5 names will be shortlisted. And these 5 names must have had a secretary tag in the Government of India. And also they must be of high levels of integrity, and also they must have some election management rules in the past. Also, tenure has been 6 years or till 65 years whichever is earlier. Next, if the election commissioner becomes the chief election commissioner at some point of time, the total tenure must not be more than 6 years. Now, when it comes to the removal process, it is very important that the removal of the chief election commissioner and the other election commissioners are different. Now, everything is fine with the CEC because the CEC is actually removable only by the manner by which you remove a Supreme Court judge. That is proven misbehavior or incapacity. And that is where you understand that, okay, the impeachment process is actually quite difficult. So far, no Supreme Court judge has been removed as of now in the, past history since independence. So that is where, the CEC is quite independent. If at all, if a person is appointed as CEC, that person can actually take very strong decisions. And one of the same was T.N. Session, who is actually considered one of the best chief election commissioners India ever had, right? Now, the main problem is actually with the election commissioners. Election commissioners, they can be removed only on the CEC's recommendation. Also, in the various Supreme Court cases, it was told that, okay, this must be on an objective basis, not on a subjective basis. That means that the removal of the ECs on the recommendation of the CEC cannot be arbitrary. It must be on a very documented way. But the document is not allowed in public, right? Apart from this, there are so many other kind of controversies. These were the two controversies, SIR and the appointment, which recently the process has been changed, right? Right now, the MCC, once it comes into force, the various campaigners and the parties, they cannot announce various populist measures. They cannot actually go on, for example, if you are from the ruling party, you cannot announce new schemes. You have to be very careful what you speak. But there were various allegations in 2024 general elections that some of the star campaigners, they actually were involved in hate speech. In the comment section, you can maybe let me know some of the examples which happened during that time. But the opposition alleged that the action and the various restriction on the opposition leaders were much more than on the ruling party members. Also, the Election Commission of India does not have powers to punish if someone is degrading the various virtues, the reputation of Election Commission of India in public. The Supreme Court of India has that power, but the Election Commission of India does not have that power. Also, back in 2022-23, there were allegations regarding the manipulation of the electronic voter machine, the VVPAT verification, right? For example, the Election Commission of India has always refused to not let manually count the VVPAT slips from the EVM, or they are also reluctant to conduct an independent third-party audit of the EVMs because the Election Commission of India is telling that the software code of the EVMs are actually state secret. It cannot be released in the public domain. Apart from this, there were so many other issues. For example, say the Election Commission of India does not have a proper independent staff, which the Goswami committee recommended, but it was ignored. Next, the Election Commission of India does not also have the power to deregister a political party. And that is where there are so many shell political parties, right, which are only existing in their names. They are not existing physically, right? They do not have proper members because maybe they are a front for money laundering or they are fund for, tax evasion, right? So that is why, this kind of power must be given to the Election Commission of India. Also, the cooling off period for the CEC and the ECs were recommended by Law Commission. For example, say if you are the CEC, so maybe after retirement, the government of India will tell you that, okay, I will be making you some head of some government body, right? Or say some officer in some other department after retirement. But right now, you have to maybe do some favor for me, right? So, as of now, we do not have a cooling off period of the CEC or the ECs, which must be there, which was also recommended by the Law Commission. Now, if we can look at the various other measures, we have to strengthen the autonomy of the ECs by including maybe the Chief Justice of India back in the selection committee, just like the Anup Baranwal case. Also, we have to give more financial power to the Election Commission of India, right? And that is why we have to increase the budget of the same. We have to give the staff of the EC. Also, when it comes to electoral roll revisions and such SIR controversies, all of that data must be recorded digitally. Better on a blockchain technology, because blockchain technological features make the data untampered. That means it cannot be manipulated. And that is why we should be having a digital portal of the same. Maybe also when the officers are going to the homes of the various people for SIR verification, they must be geotagged. And there must be proper SOPs, standard operating procedures, proper written procedures. Because many states are alleging that the ECI is not following some written guidelines at all. Also, when it comes to legal and procedural side, we have to amend the RPA for the revision of the electoral rules. That if, for example, the Election Commission of India is deleting some record of the people, so it must be having a rule for that. It must be having a proper legal basis for that. So that is actually quite not clear right now. Also on the technological front, when it comes to voter list updation, regulation, we can easily use AI right now. And that is why we have to use the sovereign AI model right now, right? And that is why the data and all of the aspects must be held properly, which requires a human being also to be present in the loop. So we need to hire experts to safeguard the data and automate the process of voter list updation and revisions. And we should reduce the dependence on Aadhaar card right now. We should use apps such as ECI Net, which I also covered recently in the Analyst. So such apps will be making it much more easier for the voters to enroll. And at the end of the day, we need a change in the political culture. More than the reforms in the EC which is needed right now, we need a reform in the internal party politics. We need a reform in the internal party regimes of the political party, so that the political parties, their constitution must be on their website. They must be brought under the RTI Act. Their funding must be regulated. And recent Supreme Court regulation, or say, the ban on electoral bonds is actually a very welcome scenario. And that is why we have actually a long way to go in ensuring independence to the EC. So this is a question for all of you. We can practice this. Now we'll be moving on to the simplified articles. So around 1 month ago, our Prime Minister announced $500 billion of investment opportunities in our country in the renewable energy side. And that is why this editorial is arguing that, okay, we can also have green ammonia manufacturing in the country. Now this article itself I felt was very complex. There were so many unnecessary terms, and that is why let us actually understand what is really relevant for prelims and mains examination. Now, when we talk about ammonia, NH3 is a very core component of the fertilizers in our country. Urea is actually manufactured using ammonia, right? And it is very important for the entire agricultural scenario. But the main problem with ammonia in the country is that we use generally grey ammonia. This means that we actually use ammonia which is coming from fossil fuels. That means that ammonia factories right now, they take crude oil, they do gasification, they actually reform the crude oil, and they emit a lot of carbon dioxide. Whereas on the other hand, we can just use renewable energy to produce green ammonia. And that is where, for example, say, whenever we are using the electricity power from the renewable energy and passing it through water, we are separating the hydrogen here. And here for the first time we are getting green hydrogen too. So from renewable process we are getting hydrogen in a green format, and that is where we are also using a machine known as air separation unit, which is trying to supply the nitrogen from the air and combine the hydrogen from electrolysis into this machine, which combines the chemical processes known as Haber-Bosch process and gives us green ammonia. So nitrogen plus green hydrogen is actually giving birth to green ammonia, which is actually used in fertilizers around the world. Also, this can be used as fuel, and at the end of the day, it is green, right? It is actually derived from renewable energy. It is causing less kind of pollution. So this is where there is a question for green hydrogen and how green hydrogen can decarbonize the various industries above. Let me know the answers in the comment. You can also have a look into the various comparison between the green ammonia, green hydrogen and green methanol here. Now, when we talk about the main news here, what happened is that in our country we have a program known as the SITE program. SITE program actually gives various subsidies and various amount of incentives to various producers of green hydrogen. Because right now we are also producing hydrogen in a very polluting format using fossil fuels. So we should be producing more green hydrogen, and that is why more electrolyzers are required and more amount of subsidies are required. Now, to promote more green ammonia, let us use the SITE program and the SECI, which is a PSU of our country. Now, this is actually looking into the various solar technologies. Now, what this program is trying to do is that, for example, imagine that you want to purchase 1000 tons of ammonia yourself alone. So obviously the various ammonia companies, they will be charging a lot of rupees from you. But imagine that hundreds of people or hundreds of other people like you who would require ammonia, they go to that particular factory and they place that order. So definitely on a bulk order, generally we get discounts. So what the government of India did, the government of India actually talked to various fertilizers plant in the country. They told that, okay, let us all come together, because the grey ammonia cost is around at $515 per ton. And generally the green ammonia cost is much more, double, triple of that cost. So if you, or say the fertilizer plants, want to reduce the price of the green ammonia, let us all place a bulk order and then we will be getting a discount. So this is exactly what has happened, right? So the government actually placed bulk order for 13 major fertilizer plants in the country, and that is where we got 40 to 50% cheaper green ammonia right now, right? And this is where we have to understand that apart from this, the government is also giving various kind of subsidies to these kind of fertilizer plants for 3 years, so that the cost of green ammonia has actually come down. It has come down to more than triple or 4 times the cost, to around 49.75 to 64 rupees per kilo of green ammonia, which is kind of comparable to grey ammonia. Still the green ammonia is kind of expensive, but still it is right now lower, and it is kind of very efficient, firstly because it is bringing down the carbon dioxide emissions. Secondly, we are saving 30% ammonia which we are currently importing indirectly by crude oils which go into processing of the grey ammonia, right? Also, for example, many of these fertilizer plants are actually located very close to the port and the coastal regions. So easy transport within the country and outside the country is possible. So we can have better exports in the future. And if we are reducing the dependency on other countries, we are actually diversifying and we are reducing the various conflicts that we can face from international suppliers. So this was actually the main strategic benefit for India. Now when we talk about the global comparison, we have mainly EU and South Korea with their own amount of green ammonia trading platforms known as H2 Global and Clean Hydrogen Portfolio Standard. Now why am I including them in the prelim pointers? Because UPSC prelims can tell you that, okay, H2 Global was seen in the news is related to what? Clean hydrogen portfolio strategy or standard is related to what? So that is why you have to be very well aware of this kind of terms. And that is why if you see, the EU and South Korea is actually having a kind of a similar platform like India, and that is why India is trying to have this kind of green ammonia plant, and that is why our Prime Minister is also enticing that, okay, we have a 500 billion opportunity in the country. Let us actually invest in India's green renewable energy, because gradually more countries in the future will be demanding that same. And the EU and South Korea are the early movers. So if India also does the same, India can become a global leader in this. So this was all for this one. Let us move on to the next. Now guys, this is a very important article for your upcoming prelims, because the Finance Minister recently has launched the National Monetization Pipeline 2.0. Let us understand this from the absolute basics. Now guys, you understand that from childhood only we have seen various government offices. Some of the offices are bustling with so many employees. Some of the offices are totally empty, right? Also maybe beside your home there is a government land which is lying vacant for 20, 30, 40 years. So simply the government is losing money there, where the government could have rented the land out, could have rented the building out, right? Because the building is kind of an asset for the government. The offices are there. For example, the chairs are also maybe there. The light and electricity all are there. The government is paying those kind of rent and or those charges without any reason. So government can actually try to do something which we know as capital recycling. So this kind of assets, say land, buildings, on the various things the government has, these are the government asset or the capital. So if we try to recycle the capital, if the government tries to give the building to some private company, for example, it can be a real estate company, it can build or say totally remodel the entire building and build a proper shopping complex. So there will be a lot of economic opportunities, lot of investment will happen, lot of employment will happen in that mall. That is where capital recycling is the main motto of the asset monetization and mainly under the national monetization pipeline. This is where the government is trying to unlock the economic potential of various assets of the government related buildings and the infrastructure. So that is why government uses two kind of mechanisms. First is the private-public partnership. All of you have heard about it, right? We have so many models of the same. In the investment model part of your syllabus, right? We have studied in detail the various models of TOT, BOT, right? And the various other models, toll operate transfer, build operate transfer, operate maintain transfer. So this means that, for example, if there is a building, right? So the government can actually give it to the private sector. The private sector will be operating it. The private sector will be setting up some new shops, new malls here. It will be trying to get the money from the various other peoples. And some of the revenue the government can also get. So this is exactly why the government should be actually doing more of asset monetization. Because firstly, those kind of assets are being used, they are being recycled. Secondly, government is earning money from them at the end of the day. Also, government can use capital market instruments like InvITs and REITs. InvITs and REITs, just imagine them like that there are some organizations, right? They pull in money, they pull in the people's money in one organization and then they maybe are investing in the real estate sector. For example, there are hundreds of friends of mine, for example, all of us are actually investing 10 rupees in this organization. So we have got 1000 rupees. Now this InvIT, this private company will be investing 1000 rupees in a real estate sector. For example, another building and another kind of opportunities. So that is where the government comes in. So all the money that the InvITs and the REITs have, right? So that money can actually go into these government lands or into these government buildings, right? And this is where the government mainly wants to utilize the brownfield public infrastructure. It means that these are the infrastructure where there are some kind of infrastructure already there. For example, there is a building, there is an airport, there is say some highways which are built. So the private sector only just need to improve that kind of say public infrastructure. The private sector is not building the entire thing from scratch, right? So this is exactly what the InvITs and the REITs can invest directly in such already constructed public infrastructure. And from then they can generate more employment, they can actually generate more amount of money even for the government. Now this was actually what was conceptualized in 2021 by the National Monetization Pipeline. So the government identified, okay, that we have various roads, we have various urban infrastructure, airports, power lines, warehouses or stadiums even, which we can give to the private sector. So what happened actually, over a period of time, the government actually unlocked 5.3 lakh crores in rupees from the private sector. Because the private sector would take the asset of the government and they would operate their own business, correct? And that is where if you see, the top sector is the highways, that is the road sector, right? And private investment came to be around 5.8 lakh crore. That means this was actually kind of a success. Firstly, the asset is being used. Secondly, the government is earning money, right? So that means 89% of the target was achieved. And that is why we are actually going with, the National Monetization Pipeline 2.0. So annually, we have various targets till 2030. And this was actually conceptualized as a part of the asset monetization plan, which was announced in the last year's budget, right? So sometimes that is why you see many schemes and policies are announced in one budget and they are implemented over the years. Even the schemes and policies which are announced in this budget, they maybe will be implemented over the years, right? Now, look at the recent one, 2.0. So the timeline is 5 years till 2030, and that is why this was announced in the last year budget at the tune of 16.72 lakh crore. So the total estimated potential of this money, mainly we will going to the government of India in the Consolidated Fund of India, and also to the various state governments too. Now, some of this money also will be going as a direct investment, right, to some projects, because government sometimes also will not be keeping the money in the CFI or with the state governments. They will be also be investing in the various roads, power sector, railways, coal, ports of our country. On the other hand, the private sector will be contributing around 5.8 lakh crore, right? And you also should be looking at this list in your handout on a detailed basis. Now, we will be moving on to the next one. So this article is talking about predictive and prediction markets. Now these markets are actually very unique kind of markets. For example, you will be laughing at this right now, that such kind of markets known as poly market, which is a private company as a form of prediction markets, they are predicting if Lord Jesus Christ will be returning this year or not. Just imagine the absurdity. And also there are so many people who are telling that, okay, there is a 4% chance that Jesus Christ will return before 2027. Now this is, I don't know whether this is an insult on Jesus Christ or this is an insult on our own human wisdom, that we are betting on these events. For example, if you look at this poly market website, you can also go on to them, but do not bet obviously guys, right? If you see whether Mr. Mamdani will be opening grocery stores or not, even related to Epstein files, or where some players will be traded. So this means that this market is a digital platform where such gambling happens of some future events, right? So there will be some probable event in the future, and there will be some people, some maybe very intelligent people, who will be making a financial profit if such outcomes come true. So obviously you can understand the things which have low chances will have very high amount of, say, volume of money, right? So this means that this is a purely betting platform, and these platforms use blockchain, cryptocurrencies, VPN networks, and that is why we have discussed this previously also. You let me know the answers in the comments below. Now, how this is working? This is working by a website, a digital platform, where you can go on to them, but you should not go on to them guys, right? Let the other people go and waste their money. What they are doing, they go there, they link their bank account, they spend money, even cryptocurrencies, and majority of the same, they are actually using stable coins, which is actually a mix between cryptocurrency plus some stable asset such as dollar or US bonds, right? So this is actually, this kind of stable coins reduce the volatility of the cryptocurrencies. But it does not mean that these stable coins are used for legitimate or serious purposes. Look at this kind of purposes, right? So on such platforms, there is a yes or no. That means if you say yes, you will be buying shares, right? If you also say no, you will also be buying shares. That means you agree to that event happening or not happening. If you agree that, okay, Jesus Christ will be returning in 2027, you say yes or you say no. Now on such platforms, if you go on to them, you buy some yes or no shares, and this yes or no shares also have dynamic pricing. So if you, for example, see some event which has only 4% yes, right, that means it has a very less chance of happening. That means maybe the price will be low, right? Or on the other hand, if the no votes are higher, then maybe the prices are higher. So it is actually dependent on demand and supply. And you can sell anytime your yes or no shares for your money. Now in the Indian context, this kind of markets are grey area. But you know, the various other kind of markets, for example, Dream 11, these Ludo games, online rummy, right? All of these are actually under the state subject. So respective state governments actually kind of regulate them, right? Also, there is a huge debate whether this kind of things are actually a thing of skill or a thing of chance. And generally, game of chances are actually kind of prohibited, kind of not allowed in the country. Also, if you look into the FEMA regulations and the RBI regulations, betting on foreign companies' websites using foreign exchange or cryptocurrencies is totally prohibited, and you can actually come under scanner if you do that. Now, if you can look into the other parts of the world, right? For example, if you can look into the US, it is actually regulated by their own body, right? But it also faces various state level bans. US has around 50 states, right? So state specific bans are there, right? Also, when we talk about UK, Germany, Singapore, they have all banned it. Also, if you look at the poly market status in India, as of now they are not banned, but maybe in the near future they will be banned, right? And this is where we have to understand these kind of platforms are more vulnerable for generally the poorer sections of the population, because they want to make easy money if they are lured by some advertisements or these kind of things, because their digital literacy skills are actually quite poor. And that is why the government must take immediate action on such platforms. Now, let us move on to the next one. So, the International Energy Agency is in the news, and it is in the news because India wants to become a full member of the same. Let us actually understand the concept from the very basics. Firstly, understand that right now, recently, the global leaders met in Paris as a part of the meeting under IEA. And there were various companies also who were present there. And naturally, if there are so many companies which amount to more than $14 trillion, that means it is also an economic opportunity for India to be present at that summit as a permanent member. But why it is not possible? Because let us understand from the very basics. The story starts in 1973 when Israel was actually at war with some of the Arab nations. Now, Arab nations were oil-rich nations. The oil-rich nations decided, okay, the countries which are aligning with the Israel nation, those countries will not be getting oil. So they started putting in oil embargo or restrictions on oil supply on a global level. So naturally the global prices started rising. Now OECD were mainly the developed countries, and also they had some link with Israel. They were mainly impacted due to the high rise in prices of oil. And OECD, which was formed almost 1 decade ago, in 1974 formed this International Energy Agency. So, the International Energy Agency has a membership criteria that firstly you should be a part of the OECD. India is not part of the OECD. Also, if you are part of the IEA, you should be maintaining 90 days of net oil imports as strategic reserves. For example, say we have the same in India also. Imagine this is the land, right? And if you see underground, we have huge abundant coal mines. In the coal mines, we are storing petroleum. Why? Because maybe there will be another COVID pandemic. There will be another natural disaster due to which we cannot import oil or say petrol. And that is why 90 days of oil or say petrol must be in the country. So this is what we know as strategic petroleum reserves. We have at Visakhapatnam, Mangalore, a new one is coming at Chandigarh in Odisha. So this means that India already has the requirement that we know. But we are not part of the OECD. But India became actually a member country since 2017, right? And that is when we are trying to work towards a full-time membership. Now, if you want to be a part of this IEA, you mandatorily have to maintain these minimum strategic buffers, right? And also, if you can understand that IEA was actually presented as an alternative to this kind of Arab countries who are very oil rich. So that, with reference to any kind of conflict such as 1991 Gulf War crisis or the Russia-Ukraine crisis, these reserves were actually used because simply these OPEC countries where these Arab oil-rich countries are actually having a very big say. Sometimes they dictate the prices, they increase the prices in cases of this kind of conflicts just to have more profits. So in cases of this, this IEA and the membership and the OECD countries, they coordinate global responses to decrease the oil prices. Also, when we talk about the total members of the IEA or the permanent members, we have 33 full members as of now, Colombia being the latest one. Now, when we talk about the shift of energy from fossil fuel to renewables, that is what we are understanding, that as of now, when we talk about renewable energy, climate change, decarbonization, all of these are pointing that the energy requirement in the future will be based on green sources such as solar energy, such as wind energy, hydropower, right, with reference to even critical minerals. These are all the new shifting focus right now. And also, for example, say when we talk about the entire global demand, right, for the various petroleum and all of the say new energy sources, right now, we have India, China, Brazil, South Africa, and so many other countries who are around 80% of the global energy demand, whether it is from the fossil fuels or it is from the green sources. So that is exactly why there is a need for expansion in the IEA and a need for relaxation of the OECD status. So you have to get rid of the status. India started requesting it from October 2023, and the IEA was telling India that okay, the founding charter is actually not allowing us to enroll India as a permanent member. But over a period of time, India is right now having more voice globally, internationally. So that is why IEA is actually responding to including India as a permanent member too. Now, if India becomes a permanent member, obviously India will have much more decision-making power when it comes to controlling and regulating, setting prices, and also looking at the various international mechanisms for crude oil and their supply. Also, when we talk about the various data and the knowledge that we will be getting as a part of the IEA and the expertise, it will be also very good for our own energy security, because till now, India has told that we will be having net zero by 2070. So till then, we will be using fossil fuels, and we need leadership and knowledge and data under this. And that is why energy security is important to become net zero. We have to maintain our growth as a democratic country, as a developing country going forward. We cannot straight away impose 100% renewables right now. So that is why we have to maintain fossil fuel supply also along with renewable energy. On the other hand, we have to combat climate change. So that is why being a part of the IEA and talking that not only we should be using crude oil, we should be including renewable energy, we should be decreasing crude oil supply because of climate change, we should be also talking about new changes such as ethanol, biofuels as a part of decarbonization. We should be also talking about EVs, batteries, critical minerals as a part of energy transmission, and that is where India and the permanent membership status at the IEA will be very much helpful. And that is why we can also showcase our lifestyle for environment approach. So this is where we also understand that for UPSC prelims, they ask various important reports, mainly from IEA, WB or IMF. So for example, the IEA releases World Energy Outlook, Net Zero by 2050, World Energy Investment Report, and also India Energy Outlook. So this is where we have to understand that IEA actually has a kind of a little focus on India too. Maybe in the near future, we can be included as a part of permanent member at the IEA. So now let us move on to the last article. So the Kuno National Park is said to get 8 more cheetahs. Now, you know guys, the cheetahs went extinct almost 7 decades ago due to heavy amount of hunting mainly by the princely states. Now for the first time, in September 2022, 8 cheetahs came from Namibia. And gradually more came from South Africa, Botswana were the recent batch in the recent times. Right? For example, say, right now, when we talk about the IUCN status of the African cheetah, the ones which are present in our country, they are vulnerable. But the Iranian cheetah or the Asiatic cheetah are the cheetahs which are actually much more endangered. They are critically endangered, right? And here, when we talk about the cheetahs, you know that they are the fastest land animal, reaching the speeds up to around 128 kilometers per hour, right? Also, if you look, their stride or the hind leg and the foreleg, the maximum distance that can reach is around 21 feet. So literally, they feel like they're flying in the air. And the bones and the muscles in their feet are actually quite soft and actually quite light, which help them almost glide over the years. And when it comes to conservation of cheetahs in India, the National Tiger Conservation Authority is entrusted with the same. Also, we have included the cheetahs under Schedule 1 of the WPA. So right now the latest batch of cheetahs will be coming from Botswana. First one came from Namibia, South Africa and now Botswana, bringing the total number of cheetahs to be around 28. Our main target is 50, and that is where we understand that a better amount of breeding program is important. And we are bringing the cheetahs from Botswana directly to Kuno National Park here, located in this part of Madhya Pradesh. If you can look into the other details also. The cub who are being born out of the cheetahs who came earlier in India, right now we have 39 cubs who are born at Kuno National Park since 2023. And that is where we have only 27 cubs who are surviving because of the adaptation issues and so many cubs who have died in recent years. And that is why we are trying to even have a broader population dynamics of the cheetahs in the region, so that we are not only locating them in Kuno National Park, we are also shifting them to nearby areas too, and mainly to areas where we have similar geography and the features like Kuno National Park. One of them is Sanjay Gandhi Wildlife Sanctuary, and that is where 3 of them will be also sent there. And right now we have 35 at the Kuno National Park, bringing the total at 38. So this means that we have a great cheetah project right now in the country, which needs to be conserved. More medical attention should be given to the cubs and also to the cheetahs who are being translocated right now because of the deaths in the recent times. So let us actually hope that they will be well and be alive in a better condition. Now at the very end, I thank you all for being a very patient audience. Please do attend the quiz which is following up. Till we meet again, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.